Welcome to the second week of our study on disciples, and this talk is entitled Make and Teaching. We're going to be looking specifically at Matthew 28, as you'd expect, and in particular also John 3, 16 and 17, which you'll know about. So what we're going to talk about is what discipleship actually is and the making of a disciple. In other words, the teaching of a disciple, or the disciple's desire to be taught might be another way of putting it, probably a better way of putting it. I'll explain as we go along. So John 3:16 to 17, particularly John 3:16, is a very, very well-known passage. It's often described as the gospel, the core of the gospel. And just to remind us all, the writer John wrote these absolutely amazing words. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. The gospel. Something that we should hold dear and something that we believe as Christians. That's a core tenet of our walk as Christians. The second verse, which is equally important and something that's always stuck in my mind, is, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. So this is this thing about we've not been held in judgment, we've been given an opportunity to be saved. And it's through Jesus, through the emulation of Jesus, the copying of Jesus, the trying to be like Jesus and live like Jesus and learn from Jesus' life. In other words, it's this desire to follow him, and follow him not in the sense of, like a sheep following the shepherd through a gate. It's follow as in trying to be him, trying to follow what he did, trying to, copy's probably the wrong word, but actually live a life that reflects the life of Jesus. The other verse we were talking about is in Matthew 28. Very well known to all missionaries, should be well known to everybody in the church. Peel Elim describes itself as a movement. The words it often uses is missional, which implies that we as churches shouldn't see ourselves just as a sort of little holy huddle somewhere in a town somewhere. Seeing ourselves actually being out on mission in the place that God has placed us, even if it's the place that our family has been for centuries, on our doorstep of the church building, on the doorstep of our house. That's where our missionary field begins, and we should see the Great Commission in those lights, not just to the ends of the earth, but to also from the beginning of our drive. And the Great Commission is this. At the end of Matthew is written this, and these are the words of Jesus. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. So we've got to go out into the world and make disciples. And the way you make disciples is to find people who want to be discipled, that want to follow Jesus. And then you, with them, will help each other, and you teach them what you know, and you can learn from them as well. It's this whole concept of iron sharpening iron, that we work together to achieve the Great Commission, which is to make disciples of all nations. This is not something that's just restricted to our own little holy huddle. It's not restricted to the people that we like to hang around with. It is everybody. Not just our friends down our local club, but also the people in the other clubs, the people that support the other football teams, the people that don't talk like us, look like us, behave like us, people that we wouldn't feel comfortable around, even those we have a calling to go to. It is this whole concept of the fact that we are all sons of Adam, we are all daughters of Eve, and together we can work together to take the message, to take the gospel that Christ died for us all, John 3:16, to the world. So what is a disciple? I mean, that's actually the core of what we will be looking at this month. What is a disciple? Well, funny enough, making disciples is one of the 4 key strategic objectives of the Elim movement. So this is a core strategic objective of the denomination that we are members of, making disciples. Just out of interest, the other 3 strategic objectives are developing leaders, which very much comes after the making disciples. Disciples become leaders. Through that, we grow the churches, we input into the churches, we resource the church being the people, in other words, the disciples. And through that, we also go out and reach not just our own nation, but the nations around us and beyond us. People that travel through the island and come to meet us and greet us and get to know us. If they move on to another destination, or the people that we know have to move somewhere else, they will take it with them. And maybe we would actually get called ourselves as individuals to the other ends of the ends of the earth. Making disciples is the core of that whole strategic endeavour that Elim has called itself to do this decade. Again, coming back to the word, what is a disciple? Well, discipleship is something that's talked about a lot in the Bible. People think it's about discipline, it's about various other things. But discipleship at the core is that desire to learn. In fact, what the definition of a disciple is from the Latin word for learner, somebody who is actually a student of somebody. Student's really the wrong word. They're a lot more than that. It's more akin to an apprenticeship where you come alongside people who have, shall we say, done this a lot longer than you, experienced life a lot more than you, that have spent more time in the church, in the kingdom than you have, and you learn from them, you copy them, you watch how they do things, you do develop your own skills on the back of what they've done. An apprenticeship. And that word follow is important, again, coming back to what we were saying at the beginning. Following is actually following in someone's footsteps. You know, like a father teaches the son, and the son follows in his father's footsteps into whatever the trade is, whatever the skills are. You know, a farmer will want to see his son follow into his footsteps to become a farmer. It's that sort of image, that sort of walk, as you walk in someone's footsteps. One of the lovely things I remember as a young Christian, I was blessed to be in a group of like-minded lads, and we would actually greet each other with this wonderful phrase, "How is your walk?" And on the one hand, it's an encouragement, but it's also a reminder that we were on a walk, we were on a journey, an apprenticeship to learn from Christ and learn from our fellow Christians. And now, as I grow older, I realise there's also, not only do I learn from other Christians, but they learn from me too. That iron sharpens iron again. We teach each other. It is like an apprenticeship where you engage in learning from another. And it's not an apprenticeship that's been forced upon you. It's an apprenticeship that you want to do. As you all know, I had a midlife crisis and I wanted to become a lawyer. And to do that, having passed the exams, having done the study, I then had to learn the trade. And that's when the discipleship really started. I became articled to a senior advocate, and I learnt my trade from the senior advocate and other senior advocates around me. I followed in their footsteps. It was that desire to want to learn. It wasn't just a job, it was actually a calling to try and develop it. And that is the same image that we should have as Christians, that we want to follow and we want to learn from other Christians. And also the way that we behave, we ourselves will attract disciples who will want to learn from us. And then they will get to a point well, hopefully they will attract disciples that will want to learn from them, and so on, and so on. And the church will multiply from that. It will be multiplied by people who want to learn, who want to be disciples, and people who want to disciple other people. It's not about power, it's not about control, it's about sharing. It's about giving and receiving. We all want to become like the master as an apprentice. And the master, as apprentice Christians, our master is Jesus. We want to be more like him. Another modern analogy, just to make a little bit of fun, but it's quite a good idea to think about, is if you follow the Star Wars movies, you have Jedi Knights, and each Jedi Knight has its Padawan. And the Padawan is the person who follows the Jedi Knight to learn, the Jedi Master, to learn the trade of being a Jedi. And at some point that Padawan will equal his Jedi Master. And at that moment, that Padawan will become a Jedi and will be in a position then to take on their own Padawan, to train another Jedi and to train another Jedi. That is us as Christians. We follow in the footsteps of people who are closer to Jesus than us. We walk closer and closer with Jesus on a day-by-day basis if we are true disciples. And we learn from others. And if we are true disciples, we are prepared to then pass that on to people who are following us, that are 4 steps behind us, 10 steps behind us, in love and gratitude and graciousness, the same way that that was given to us. So discipleship is this training and training and training to develop the people who will move the kingdom forward. When somebody says to you, "How is your walk?" how are you going to respond? So, at the end of all our talks, we always have action, calls to action. And our call to action this week is to think about the strategic objectives that we have set ourselves at Ramsey Elim Community Church. And that first strategic objective is make disciples. It's the same as what Elim has. If you want to get more information about this, either speak to us or go to the Elim website. There's a huge amount of material and courses and encouragement that's all there. So we can all move together as a movement in making disciples. Second point is to include people. We need to always include people in our lives. We cannot be an exclusive holy huddle. We have to be in the community. Church without community is not church. We have community within the church, and that community should spill out into the church. We are one of the few organisations that's set up to benefit people who are not our members. That's what we join for. We need to pray to meet the people of peace. A person of peace is a person who is the access to more people and more people, the person who wants to know more and will bring more along with them. That sort of natural discipleship leader. If you're wanting an example of that from the scriptures, think about the lady at the well at Samaria. Having become convinced that Jesus was the Messiah, she could not hold it in. She went back to the town. She told people to follow him. Our third strategic objective is to invite people into our community. Not to be scared of inviting people across the threshold, whoever they are, whatever they look like. We need to be willing to invite people to our groups. Our groups should not be exclusive little holy huddles. They need to have that outward projection and outward look. And if our groups become too big, set up a new group. If the group is not convenient for the person that we're inviting, set up a new group that would be more convenient. Just for example, say your kids are at school and you're meeting people at the school gate, and that lovely moment when you see your children go through that gate, and that's it, you can walk away knowing that they're safe in school. How about meeting with the other parents, going for a coffee together, spending time together in that way? Or likewise, say you're working in Douglas or Ramsey or wherever, meet together before work or lunchtime or after work, an hour here, an hour there, whatever would fit in, whatever's more convenient. Saturday morning, 7 o'clock used to be brilliant. A lot of men love that time slot because it gives them the rest of the weekend together. Be willing to invite people to your group. And disciple each other within that groups. Do not be afraid to challenge, to encourage, to develop people. To speak into their lives and allow them to speak into your life. It is a vulnerable moment, but the church is all about making disciples, and we can't make disciples unless we're actually open and honest with ourselves and open and honest with where we're wanting to go, that goal of becoming a disciple and making disciples. And finally, we need to bless people in the community where we are. We need to be Christ in that community. So the takeaways from this: disciple is a person who wants to learn, who wants to follow, who wants to become like their master. If we are going to be disciples in the church, we have to desire to become more Christ-like in the way that we walk. And that includes, as Jesus had his 12 disciples, that includes us finding our disciples and making disciples, for them to find their disciples and make disciples. And overall, just remember, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever should believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. Thank you for listening.